Thank you, Steffi, and I want to start at first thanking all of you for inviting me to the event, and to Tatiana and to the whole organizing committee, and also I bring the thanks from Carlo and also his apologies because we worked together at the presentation, but unfortunately he cannot be here, or he couldn't arrange his schedule to be here in person, but I will do my best to represent also his work in this presentation. So, as you can see, I'm going to talk about the design of sustainable product service systems, or S.PSS, applied to distributed economies, and also their relationship with circular economy and local, especially local-based circular economy. And all the things and all the contents that you will see from the presentation are basically outcomes from the LeNS network research activities. What is the LeNS network? I will go through it a bit more by the end of the presentation, but basically it's a huge network of university that works on the dissemination of designs on design for sustainability, especially in education context. So it's basically the result of more than 10 years of research in different fundings received by different communities. But let me go straight to the contents. So first of all, I will go through distributed economies because they are the model that more are related probably with local context in terms of sustainability. Then also the sustainable product service system, and then obviously how they can be combined into a win-win sustainability opportunity for all. Then, as I said, I will go deeper with the LeNS project, both because it represents itself a kind of a case for decentralized, not economy, but entity about sustainability, but also because of the open access approach and the whole ecosystem that the LeNS represents in terms of dissemination of sustainability. Then, if there is time, but I don't think so, I will do my best, but I'm not guaranteeing on this. I would like to share with you an experience from a personal project that is called XYZ, and it's an S.PSS applied to sustainable ICT-based public education, which could be useful to understand better what it means to implement on a real local context an S.PSS, so all the things that is implied. So going straight to the point, distributed economies, so they are recognized as a promising model for locally based sustainability, as I said, and but we have to start from thought. Obviously, everyone in this room is definitely recognizing being here. Sometimes the centralization of processes is becoming environmentally, socio-ethical, and economically unsustainable. So I would like to start from an example. You saw the image of a centralized coal power plant. That is an extreme example of centralization in relation to energy generation. The counterpart as a distributed model would be an home-based solar-powered mini-grid in which different homes that are obviously locally proximous in local context have their own system to produce energy, and they are connected in that. Obviously, this by the LeNS project that has been studied in many different contexts. Here in particular, we are. I think the PowerPoint is a bit broken, but on the side, on the left side, you can see all the hardware and resources-based distributed economies. So I already told about energy, but we can also talk about food, for example. Instead of having intensive agriculture and centralized production system of food, we can have urban gardening, or the same with water or manufacturing. In case, for example, instead of having the big factory that produce products and then distribute them on a global scale, we could have the 3D printed furniture production. This is an example of distributed manufacturing. On the right side, there was a title, but it's not there. It's They are mainly the distributed economies areas related with information and software. So we have, for example, open source software. So it is basically based on the release of open contents in which every developer is a producer of software, of systems, instead of having a proprietary central owner of the software. And the same with information, with, for example, Wikipedia, in which every one of us could be a producer of information himself. And also design. Also design because here we have the example of a car. Instead of having, again, a factory or a design project that is owned by a brand, we could have a design project that is open source. And so everyone can get the project and can realize in a local context. Using, for example, local means of productions or local entrepreneurs. Oh yeah, there we are. Obviously, distributed economies are nothing new. They have been studied since 2005 by Millie Van Johansson, and we can summarize the concept into small-scale flexible units that are synergistically connected with each other. So this is mainly, I don't want to bother too much with definitions and literature, but so we will go straight to what the distributed economy means in terms of paradigm shift from a centralized model. We have two main perspectives in which we can define this paradigm shift. One is the structure, so we have the centralized, that is maybe a relationship from one to very many, and also hierarchical, in which the control is hierarchical, and on the other side it has a large size. Then we shift to decentralized, in which there are no intermediaries between the poles of the network, and that it's kind of small, so the size is reducing. And then we go to the extreme, that is defined distributed, in which the relationships are, the structure is peer-to-peer. As I said, for example, in the energy example, home by home, and the size is very small, so we are dealing with a really local dimension. So again, small-scale, locally based production that shift the control on the essential activity towards or by the end users. And the peer-to-peer network structure to optimize the production and consumption of goods. I want now to shift to understand better which are the main benefits in terms of sustainability of having a distributed economy instead of having a centralized one. In general, local users that are involved into distributed economies are directly involved in their environment, so that they have a direct interest on the impact that they have on their community, their environment, and specifically they will be interested in the use of conservative and renewable local resources, the decrease of pollution at the local and regional level, the decrease of waste, obviously, generation, and also the avoidance of toxic and harmful local emissions. On the other side, obviously, the advantage is that the distributed economy help to reduce the overall distribution of goods, because we said the size of the network is really small and on a local base. Then we have also, as Alexander this morning anticipated, the socio-ethical advantages that are really important, have to be considered in sustainable development. Let's remember that this social dimension is one of the fundamental dimensions of sustainable development. So again, as far as DA gives this to local users the direct access to resources and increase their participation in the mechanism of production and structure of resources, the access to resources is democratized. It adds value to resources in the region because we are valorizing what is in the local context. Then improve the connection between producer and consumers, removing the intermediaries. Obviously, it increases also the local information, knowledge, know-how, and local people capabilities. It also gives power to individual and local communities to reduce poverty and inequality. Oh, sorry. But also the distributed economy itself gives also some economic advantages and potential benefits in terms of sustainability. The network that is based on distributed economies is not centralized, so in case of any let's say, problem or dysfunction, the problem can be resolved on a local basis, and not the whole network is damaged because of resilience problem. Then it's obviously, for the same reason, flexible, because small local realities can adapt more faster to change. Then its customized solution could be easier because they're or proximus to user or made by user themselves, so they can control on customization. As I said already, there is a lower distribution system, so the costs for distributions are reduced. And finally, again, the local economy is valued. So we could make the mistake of thinking that they are always sustainable, but obviously every model has some weaknesses. Or in this case, if we keep in mind the relationship with centralized production units, it could be that the centralized systems are more optimized in terms of resource consumption, and the same could be with the labor. Labor in centralized production is more specialized, so have to save resources also. So it could be that sometimes the centralized solution is more sustainable. So instead of shifting completely from centralized to a distributed configuration, the best way would be to balance between large and small scale. So again, also the production within the distributed economy. So it's not only a question of relationship between the centralized and the distributed, but also within the distributed system. It's not said that the production unit is necessarily with low environmental impact. So we could have obviously renewable energy, but we could have a distributed situation in which energy is developed through a generator that is going with fuel, for example. So this is not sustainable at all. And also the outcomes are not necessarily with the low environmental impact, because in the case of, for example, distributed design of a car, we can have a great design of a car that is still a car, so it's all the whole problems that it's carrying with itself. So obviously, to make us a distributed economy really sustainable, what is needed is obviously knowledge, criteria, and guidelines to lead the process toward making them sustainable, and obviously methods and tools to design them toward a real sustainable configuration. And keep this in mind, because this is why I kept also the LeNSin network as the last element, because methods, tools, knowledge, and criteria is what the LeNSin network is working on. So it's aiming to fix all these problems of sustainability within distributed economy model, as well as sustainable product service system that is, yes, a win-win opportunity for sustainability, but as we will see, it has its own limits. But again, starting from an example, probably many of you is aware of product service systems, but I want to go through the definition again through some examples. Also because there are different typologies of S.PSS. In this case, we can see an office chair, a desk chair made by Miller. And here in this case we have a traditional way of selling the chair. The difference is that Miller has designed this object to extend the product lifespan, and is offering with that a warranty of 12 years, which include interventions for repair and maintenance. So this particular kind of S.PSS, I would say also the less extreme in terms of business model changes, and it's called product oriented. So there is still a traditional sell, but it comes with an additional life cycle services. So the increase of the economic value of the object itself through services. The second case again is probably well known among you, and it's mobile. It's about mobility. Mobile is a free-flow bike sharing system that was born in China, but is now spread in many cities around the world. And what is particular about the mobile system is that obviously you don't own a bike, and you pay for the use that make out of it. And I also want you to think a lot about the product that we are looking at. So it's not a bike that we probably have in our garage or in our personal bike. You see that the design of the bike is really different, it's really unusual. And for example, you can focus on the wheel that is over there. I don't think that any one of us has at home a bike with this, I don't know the technical term, but the sticks that keep the wheel. So, because in this case, the company, the bike, is keeping the ownership of the bike itself. So it's interested, since it's not making money out of the number of bikes that are sold, it's interested in making the bike as durable as possible. And this is obviously going together with their profit. So, so we have these structures that are really solid, and also even the components of the bike are designed to be differentiated and recovered and easily maintained even during the life cycle of the bike on the street, but also after the end of life. So many parts could be taken easily from a dismissed bike and used in other bikes, and the company itself uses internally a lot of resources from a disposed bike. Even for example, the electronic system of unlocking the bike is use a solar panel energy battery. They tried the first, probably some of you remember the first round of mobiles was not using a solar panel, but they understood that it was more convenient for them to have an economic advantage in using a solar panel, because it was they were saving a lot of money and also avoiding a lot of problems in terms of maintenance. But the particular thing again about this business model is that the user don't own the product, but has obviously access to that. The third case, Fabrizio already anticipated, is it's Philips, and it's called paper loops model. Philips in this case offered to companies, to offices, a solution that include the design, the installation of the infrastructure, the maintenance, and end-of-life services within that. So they take care of many lifecycle services, and they are paid per loop, so for the quantity of light that is provided to the office and how it is provided. I also put here the picture of the lamp itself, because in this case I want you to think which, again, even from mobile, which are the implications of the product design when we have such business model sustaining them. So you see, it's not a common lamp. It is easily, it could be easily divided in its components and could be easily remanufactured or recycled by Philips that is interested in this. The difference between the previous case and this one is that in this case we have the company is providing a final result. So it's not, the user doesn't have direct access on the product, but is getting benefit from the final outcome, that is in this case light. Again, this leads to a formal definition that is contained in one of the last publications of the LeNS network. And you can see the white keywords can summarize what I said as regards to these three cases. So the integrated mix of products and services. The unit of satisfaction means that we are not we are satisfying the user, the performance, not really providing a product to that. Then the innovative interactions between stakeholders are enabling the success of the business model instead of the technological innovation. Then ownership that is kept by the provider, and lifecycle services that are consequently provided by the company. But also the concept that is really important is the economic interest of the provider continuously seek sustainable solution. This is the concept of sustainable product service systems. And again, just to make graphic a bit, this paradigm shift from product to unit satisfaction, from technology to interaction of actors, and from individual ownership to access and sharing. We see that the economic interest is of the manufacturing, as we saw for the products of the bike and the lamp, but also the chair that is made to be easily maintained. So the provider is interested in designing sustainable products themselves. And here we see something that's really related also with circular economy, because in the design of these objects there are strategies. For example, the products lifespan extension, but also the resources, renewability and biocompatibility, and in some cases also the materials energy consumption minimization that are really fundamental also in circular economy. So we can also say in this context that the S.PSS is facilitating the shift also from a linear economic model to a circular economic model, since again for economic reasons. So the sustainability characteristic of the systems are going together with economic ones. I want to go through the environmental benefits again, as I did for distributed economies. First of all, for what concerns the lifespan expansion of products, then again it's really related with the circular economy. So you see in the case number one, we have a usual bike that is within what to say, the square. Let's say the square indicates the ownership that is maintained by the producer of the bike. If we think and imagine to implement this model to a usual bike, you will see that it would be probably the end of life would be half of the case number two, in which the long-lasting bike avoid costs of pre-production and production of a new bike. So the longer the product lasts, the less cost for pre-production, production, distribution, and disposal are for the provider and manufacturer. And again, the economic interest of the producer provider is in designing products that extend their lifespan as much as possible. But then again, we can do the same thinking for what concerns the consumption of resources. Let's make an example related with the washing machine, for example. It's again, if the ownership of the washing machine is kept by the provider, in this case, when you wash your clothes and you would pay per wash, it wouldn't be really convenient for the company to use a washing machine that is consuming a lot of resources, because they are paying for that resources. So in the case of S.PSS, obviously using a really efficient in terms of energy consumption washing machine would avoid a lot of costs and resource consumption. So again, the same thing. The economic interest of reducing the energy consumption in use is going together with the sustainability advantage of having a more sustainable washing machine. I will go straight with this because they are probably less related with circular economy. It's you have in case of intensifying, for example, the use of a product that you are keeping the ownership of. Obviously, you are instead of having a low use, you have an intense use during the same lifetime of the product itself. So you're not designing the product to be long-lasting, but you have an intense use of it, and obviously the profit is going together with that. Same thing we can do with energy generation. In case we are the company is producing, is providing energy and is using non-renewable energy resources, this would generate a lot of energy sources cost, and in case of the user is paying per use, it would be much more convenient to have renewable resources for which you don't have the energy sources cost, because they are provided by the environment itself. So again, it's an economic interest for the provider to design for the use of passive renewable energies. And I will skip for the recycling one, and also for the toxicity one. So even for S.PSS, is not said that we shouldn't make the mistake of thinking that this is the solution for bringing sustainability in any case, because there are, for example, many PSS that are not sustainable. The one that we are probably used to is the sale of smartphones that sometimes comes with a financial support service that is not really a life cycle service, because the real manufacturer of the phone is not really interested in designing for a long lifespan, because this offer is provided by a retailer, by another company that is not manufacturing the phone itself. And this is the case of but also there are some rebound effects that could come from the implementation of S.PSS. So, for example, if you don't own a product, it could be that if the system and service is not really well designed, you have some bad behaviors that instead of bringing value to the S.PSS are reducing the lifespan of the product that is involved. It could be, for example, for car sharing or even bike sharing. There have been many problems with bikes that have been misused and had to be maintained earlier and dismissed earlier than their actual residual life. But obviously, these kind of rebound effects are predictable, so the design process has some responsibility in taking in consideration these side effects. And again, not all these innovations are sustainable. And again, it's really important to have knowledge and criteria and guidelines to lead the process toward the sustainable design of S.PSS, as well as methods and tools. So the same as well as developed in distributed economies, there is not a model that is sustainable for itself, but need to be guided and well designed as well. So I want also to go through some barriers, because if you think about it, services or product services are not really new. The economy of our economy in Europe is almost 70% of the GDP based on services. So why are not spread all over? Why everyone is not using S.PSS as an offer? Because obviously there are some other barriers that are related to different actors. So first of all, customers. You can imagine that shifting this. You can imagine that from a cultural point of view, it's not easy to shift from ownership-based access to product to an access-based one. So this is one of the main barriers. Sometimes customers are afraid of getting in touch with these new ways of consumption. And also there is a lack of knowledge about the life cycle costs that are behind products. Sometimes we think that something that is really matching our needs at the moment, we're not, as customers, sometimes we're not thinking as the real lifespan of that thing. And we cannot associate the economic value to this characteristic, to the time that the lifespan of the object we are buying or using. So this is probably one of the most challenging barriers, because it needs a really strong cultural change that is now in place, but needs a lot of dissemination and communication also by the designers of S.PSS themselves. This is also challenging for companies, and is another important stakeholders to make the S.PSS work. Many companies, to shift from a traditional business toward an S.PSS one, they should change completely their business model and their mindset. And this is not easy, thinking that probably many companies have been doing their business for decades in Europe. So new skills and competencies are needed by companies to face this change, and they are still struggling with that. The second barrier about companies is that there is a lot of uncertainty about cash flows, because if you have a product that is provided with a pay-per-use mode, you are not having this first financial transition that is associated to selling. You're not receiving the full amount of money at the beginning of when you start providing the benefit. So it's really uncertain for what concern cash flows. And then finally, obviously, government. The policies and the regulations are still not implemented. It will be really difficult to put in practice an S.PSS, and making the agreements between the different stakeholders clear and sticking to the actual regulations. So, and this probably will be clear also if I have time, the example with the school. And finally, also for designer developers. Traditionally, designers, we see from other presentations that design for sustainability started raising really recently. So traditionally, designers don't have this training about how to design really sustainable products. So a new generation of designers is needed, and also research and development professionals that can lead change. So we now analyzed distributed economies and S.PSS separately, and we understood which are the reasons that make them sustainable, and also which are their limits and barriers. And so now we come to the major result of the research, which is the combination of the two. Because some characteristic of one and another can fulfill some barriers of the other. And what will become is a win-win sustainable opportunity forward in this case. And I want to start again from an example. So you have, in this case, we have Off-Grid Electric, that is the producer of this kit, which is composed by solar home systems and some energy-using products, 2 lights and 4 charger, which are provided by M-Power, are provided by M-Power to local communities in Tanzania in an S.PSS mode. So they don't sell the kit to people; they provide it for free, receiving in charge of a pay-per-period modality. That is a daily fee. So in this case, what happens that we are dealing with a local community which doesn't really have access to energy, and with the S.PSS business model, they don't have to face the big investment of buying such a product, but they can have access to that. And at the same time, the provider and the manufacturer are interested in designing that system to be renewable and to be long-lasting, because they are making the profit out of the time that the system is in function. So it's a very environmentally sustainable, again, because it's renewable energy, socio-economically sustainable because it's economically accessible to low-income people, and economically sustainable because it's open new business opportunities for M-Power. What I said before, it's off-grid electricity is manufactured, but M-Power is the, let's say, the provider of the service that probably earlier was doing something different. But thanks to the partnership of the two companies, the strict relationship of the two companies, so the innovation is not in technology but in the interaction that the stakeholders are, M-Power can open to a new market, which is the one basically more related with the life cycle services, assistance that is provided to the people, to the customer, which are receiving the heat. So again, to visualize the paradigm shift, and in this case the combination of the two paradigms, we can see how these two models could be combined. So from let's say the traditional way, centralized and product and technology-based way of providing goods and services, to a small scale and access-based model, which makes the system more accessible and sustainable for all. It also increased the local entrepreneurship and market opportunities in the local context itself. So we can imagine that for providing such a system, the company that needs to provide the lifecycle services is obviously local, because it has to be in contact and really close to the customer in order to fulfill the needs during the service. Yeah, I don't know why again it's but again, just not to repeat too much, but here there were highlighted from this list again of advantages, of benefits on why applying S.PSS and DA. They were highlighted the ones that were more, again, related with circular economy. So the local context would be interested in having the lifespan of objects that is expanded. So products obviously would be interest of the provider to have products reintroduced in the production circle, for example, with reusing or remanufacturing themselves. And so it was highlighted the distributed economy product equipment lifespan expansion and use intensification, but also important was the less consumption of resources using, for example, renewable energies, and also the renewability, less consumption of resources and renewability of resources. So just to conclude with more formal definition, we already said the key elements. So it extends the access to low, middle, and income context, and also entrepreneurs' organization by cutting and reducing the initial cost of the DE hardware. So in the case that we saw the energy system that is provided, and basically that's it. So I want now to shift to the LeNS network a bit, because as I said at the end of any chapter, it's needed to have a good design leading in the realization of S.PSS and DA. So not not one, neither another are sustainable by themselves. So I want to show you what the learning network on sustainability did in this sense. As I said, it started the research almost 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. The first one founded by the European Union Asia Link and the regional project between Europe and Asia. And then the LeNSin project from 2013 to 16 was mainly focused on energy system. And the final part of the formation is the LeNSin project. So it was part of the European Union Erasmus Programme, and it got together different regions, Europe, Mexico, Brazil, South Africa, India and China, into a unique network of sustainability, a higher education institute making effort to disseminate design for sustainability, education on design for sustainability. In particular, the ambition is to face the rapid and radical need of change. So the ambition is to rapidly promote a new generation of designers through a new generation of educators also that are capable of effectively share and design sustainable systems for all. So this is the main ambition that the LeNS network is aiming for, with also a particular purpose that is shared by the whole design community worldwide, which is based on multipolar open access and learning by sharing, distributed knowledge generation and dissemination. That is, I know that is also part of this present workshop, especially for what concerns the open access to knowledge and dissemination. And how this is provided, how this is put in practice. We said that it is really important to have tools and methodologies. So these are also some of the outcomes of the project. We have some open e-labs that are spread all around the different regional networks and that are accessible for free and in which you can find tools, open tools for design for sustainability. And secondly, an open e-platform that gathers together all the institutions and which is decentralized itself, using an open access approach. So all the contents that are uploaded on the platform are accessible and copyleft to be used by the whole members of the network. In particular, as I said, the labs are equipped with computers and support tools for design for sustainability, and video conference also facilities accessible for all. While the platform is probably the most important element of dissemination in this sense. Because it's a one single platform that gather together many different resources for all. So, for example, we have courses and lectures that all the different actors part of the network can realize and upload on their regional scale of the network. Then we have also tools which are specifically designed for S.PSS and distributed economies, the design of S.PSS and distributed economies. Then we have also the case studies, a huge collection of case studies that are already divided into the existing knowledge about S.PSS and distributed economies, especially for what regards the strategies that case studies that has been implemented in the case studies, and so they could be also easily visible for who accesses the platform, because they are directly related with design strategy that has been used in the realization of the case studies. And then obviously also projects made by students all around the world. So let's say that technically, every region has its own platform, but all of them are part of one huge one, another one that connects all together. So this makes the LeNS platform a kind of regenerative platform, because every the code of the main platform is downloadable for every regional section, and everyone can implement a new network which is related with the institutions that are part of that region, and can create contents and share content with the network itself. Thank you.